All right, we're gonna get a little closer.
Or something. Hi, wait, the chair's too. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Good evening for many of you, and good afternoon. Wow, what an incredible series of sessions over the past 2 days. Shout out to the team at Center for Third World Organizing. Shout out to We and Goliath. Shout out to all the folks who have presented so far.
Yes,
the workshops that I have been in have already enriched my life. Anybody know from the last workshop, sometime you need to sit down and blow bubbles. So that's the guideline right there.
And other comments we won't mention.
And other comments that I was like, well, I guess I'll just be an ally to that conversation. And so we're so excited to be with you. My name is Franklin.
I'm Gingy.
And we are the owners and the co-founders of Blaze Consulting Group. And we're based out of San Leandro, right next door to Oakland. And our opportunity for today is to just have a conversation with each other and with you as two folks who have come up from community and done decades of work, mostly with young people and families. And now we have, for the past 10 years, operated a consulting company to build the capacity of nonprofit and public sector organizations, including government, to best serve our communities and to do their best work, not only on their own, but in partnership with community. And so our opportunity today is to share a little bit of what we've learned over the past decade about building liberatory organizations and our own journey towards internal and then collective liberation with each other and with the folks that we work with day in and day out and the organizations that we work with, because it is both a process for us, it's both a process and a practice.
Right, great. And a couple things. We actually have only been in our own business for a decade, but we've been doing this since we were both about 16. I'll say I'm 47. I won't tell his age. And so this is our blood. This is who we are. We are folks who believe that in order to have radical shift in our communities, sometimes we got to do some real radical things. The other thing I want to note, just in case, is that we're actually married too. I know that's a shock to some of y'all because you're like, what? We are married. So we will be speaking as experts from folks who have been educators, nonprofit leaders, board members, to for-profit leaders and funders as well as how you keep community and family healthy when you are in partnership and relationship with each other. If you are in the room, can you just give us a shout out in the chat box, drop an emoji or something in there so we know we're just not looking at ourselves. We like each other, but we like to see y'all more. We do like to laugh and make jokes, so if you think anything is funny to you, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Before we move forward, one of the greatest things I've learned from elders in my life, my mother and my grandmother, who are now ancestors, is in the midst of doing work that is challenging, that goes against the culture, that isn't popular, you have to remember to laugh. Mm-hmm. And so part of the way we do our work is we laugh through it all. That is even in presentations. That's when we are struggling. That's during the highs and the lows. And so come on and laugh with us as we take a journey today. All right, y'all ready to roll? Give me a thumbs up. I see some of y'all out there. Okay, there's people out there, Frank. Ooh, we got heart faces.
That's awesome. Peace all y'all. So let's, Amy, let's throw up our slide. We'll bring it back down after we get folks checking in. But let's put in our slides and see where it takes us.
Great. As we move forward, please feel free to take pictures of our slides, take notes. We are interactive, so we will be presenting some of the things we have experienced, but we also, as coaches, as trainers, will also be engaging your own mind and the expertise in your own life as well. All right, so a little bit about Blaze Consulting.
So Blaze Consulting Group creates transformative experiences that optimize immersive programming to activate positive results. And you can read the rest of it, but essentially we do coaching, training, a lot of leadership development. And what we're trying to do is raise the capacity of organizations to do the work that they set out to do.
The other thing, in a nutshell, we like breaking systems. So we like going in and looking at systems, process, and procedures that actually need to be revamped or completely dismantled and something created different. So people call us to challenge things, and we really love that.
Really love
People
that.
hire us to tell them the truth. That's another workshop. We'll get there later. All right.
So why don't we say a little bit about ourselves? So Ginger, you want to start by saying, because to understand the Blaze Consulting story is to understand in many ways our stories as the founders, and the work we do in community and the work we do towards the movement is deeply connected to our own personal stories. So
Yeah.
Ginger, why don't you share a little?
When you talk about liberation and creating liberatory organizations, for-profit or nonprofit, you got to know the origin story. Because the origin story is what connects you to the essence and the heartbeat of the work when all hell breaks loose. I may cuss on here. Anybody care? Okay. So here's my origin story in a nutshell. I'm from Inglewood, LA, to be specific. I went to 10 different schools before college. Yes, say that. 10 different schools before college. So what does that mean? I grew up poor. I grew up homeless. My single mother tried everything she could, but as a Black woman without a high school degree who was coming out of an abusive relationship and dealing with so many things, she did the best she could. And in the midst of not having the finances, the housing security, she poured a lot of love into me, and she said, baby, you could do better. I dealt with in my family depression, mental health, a whole lot of things, unfortunately, that many people of our background or my background have gone through. But in the midst of that, there were what I call angels along the way, or people like yourself who saw this little Black girl like me, whether they were in a school, whether they showed me how to protest for the Black Student Union, whether they heard my voice when everyone thought I had a speech impediment. They saw me when I couldn't write the way everyone else wrote because of learning gaps, but they never stopped seeing the underdog. And so for all of you that are fighting for the underdog and white dominant culture in our country or wherever you are, here we are. And so now my journey at this point, there's so much more, is I now have broken generational poverty. We are our own bosses. I actually wind up going to UC Berkeley where they told me I couldn't get in, and UC Berkeley didn't raise me or train me. I just actually wanted to see if I could get in.
Come on.
And so now my life mission and cause, for those that know me, is literally to be the voice for people who can't speak. We speak against power and oppression when needed, and then we also help heal. I am a healer at my origin. But my greatest accomplishments outside of marrying this amazing man, he really is amazing, I'm not lying, some of y'all know, is I have 2 sons and a niece that we've raised, and they are extraordinary humans. They are already better than us. So when we talk about creating liberatory organizations, our kids were 2 and 3 years old when we started. They now are going to be business people. They want to take over companies. They don't know poverty. They don't know that Black men and Black women don't own businesses. They actually know they could be bosses. And in that, they also know they have a responsibility in a social justice lens to take care of our folks. So that's who I'm at in a nutshell. I'm grown. All right, Frank.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but what I will say in the vein of building liberatory organizations is my own story is a story of trying to fight what I didn't know when I was in my 20s about what I was up against. I thought I knew what I was up against coming up in the 90s hip hop and culture, but I didn't know. And so it was constantly a journey of knowing and then not knowing and not knowing, and not being able to go to home life, my blood family necessarily for understanding, because where I came from in Deep East Oakland, my mother had struggled with drugs. My father's a schizophrenic and a paranoid person who's got multiple diagnoses. And so I constantly had to come to organizations like yours, community organizers, youth development agencies, educators who went outside of traditional education to help me to understand and make sense of the world around me so that I could walk away and practice those things and see, is it applying? Where's the tension? Where's the rub in trying to apply what I'm learning? And then how do I work against all the trauma that inherently came from my bloodline that is of no fault of my mom, no fault of my dad. It's what they inherited. And, we could go back, bring Nika Smith back on camera to break down that impact. But it meant that I was constantly trying to free myself and trying to think and act and experience my way into a certain sense of freedom in the hope always that I can do it for my sisters and do it for my mother and do it for all the people around me in East Oakland, and ultimately now an expanded environment of not only community life here in the East Bay, but throughout any land that I can touch, to bring what I've learned so far. But that means that I recognize now, and I have enough sense to know that my consciousness understands that I don't know what I will know 10 years from now. And I have to allow my approach to liberation and liberatory practice to evolve. I can shift, you can shift, you all on this call will shift. And certainly the world as it was pre-pandemic and pre-quarantine is not the world we're in now in so many ways. And so we get to try new things and innovate new things. And that's a part of what the Blaze Consulting story is.
We are social justice. And so when you think about the people you serve, the people you come from, the organizations you are designing, some of you need to restructure your orgs. We're just going to keep it all the way real. Some of you need to start new orgs. What we're saying is don't be afraid to be the opposite of what white dominant culture has told us nonprofit and business should be. Some of us are scraping together what we got. And what we say is be scrappy. Make it happen. And today we're going to go through some of the ways that we as Blaze Consulting makes this happen as we venture to our next business. And so let's roll with us. Okay, I see the chat.
Let's roll with it. So as you guys can see, for me, and for us, the piece is lived experience is valued in every way in our organization.
And some skills in there too, some skills.
Let's go. All right. Let's start.
You got the slide.
Oh, thank you. Let's start with the check-in. So do I just click here? Here we go.
All right, great.
All right. So we know that part of living liberation is the movement for life. And so I want to invite people. I know people were checking in yesterday with their cities, and you're welcome to do that and to look at the attendee list. That's important. And I want to invite you to check in today, which is a practice of our organization, no matter what we do in terms of whenever a group of my team members and our team members come together, we start with a check-in. Whenever we do a one-on-one call, we start with a check-in. Whenever Kyrishi Wigginton and I start to do anything together, we're going to start with a check-in. So we've been doing this for well over a decade. And today's check-in, I want to invite people to hit the chat. And I want you to look at this opportunity. When you move in liberation, are you moving free these days? Are you moving not to lose? Are you just moving? Are you not moving at all? Check in in the chat, and word on the street is if someone wants to come on screen, we can do that as well. You just hit to the right, you'll hit raise hand, and Amy, our friend Amy, will help you get on screen and let us know. But are you moving free? And you can be real here. There's no judgment. It might be that I was moving free because I've been a part of this conference for the past 24 hours, but I came to this conference moving not to lose. I've been moving and playing it safe. Or I'm just moving because sometimes we're just tired and worn down, or we're not moving at all. Yeah. So let's take the options down. Moving free, moving not to lose, just moving or not moving. Let's see some people check in. Hey, Kyrishi.
How you moving?
Thank you for this. And I love that y'all started with your story. And I think it's so key. For me, I am moving free. And I say this, for me, anything starts with self, right? And so that means, and I'm getting older, and so I'm perimenopausal, so it's a whole different, like learning to love myself fat was one thing, learning to love myself fat and older is different, right? I got these gray eyebrow hairs, but it's like learning to love myself and be free with myself and my body at every iteration, and anything else in my life moves out from that point. But that is the key. And to me, I couldn't do any work in the world that I do unless I was actively doing it with self first. And my goal is to be free. Like I want to be free, and how I move is I want to give other people permission to be free. So that's mine. I'm moving free.
Thank you, Kyrishi. And I just want to point before you go, one of the things that I love about moving free in particular is those of us that are leaders, if you are kind of moving towards over your 40 and you started young as an organizer, I was 16, I'm 47 now, the body moved different. Here's the part about liberatory organization and design, even in our mind, is that now many of us need to step into and embrace what moving free looks like as we become elders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, culture and business and all that, how we look, how we present, but as we age gracefully and as we acquire all of this experience, there's something about becoming an elder and the wisdom of the elder.
Come on.
And so as we see ourselves in a certain way, the jewel in living long and building organizations and restructuring and starting movements is the wisdom we collected a wrong way. That's a badge.
I'm so sorry. Can I just say something real quick to what you said, Gingy? When I was in the Bay, I used to take dance classes at the Malanga Center. And what I loved was watching the elder women dance because they would do the same move, right? You got women in their 60s dancing, 60s, 70s dancing, but there's a gracefulness, there's an ease, there's a slowness. They weren't jumping, and I would watch them because there was something that was being communicated in how they were. I don't know how to name it, but there was something beautiful about how they were with the movement, with the ease of life, being in the flow of life that was different than everybody else who's just like in a rush to get across the floor. There was a lot to be learned. And so that came up to me when you were saying that, because it's different, right?
Thank you. Yeah. And I want to jump off of that. That's a great jumping point, is that as we create organizations and we reconstruct the way business is done and the way people are cared for within our organizations, part of what allows us the confidence to do that is the life experience. And so when I hear Kyrishi talk about the elder of the women and the way they moved and the grace, when you survive some things, when you have done what people say you couldn't do, when you have seen freedom and felt freedom, even in the smallest thing that someone would never put on TV, but you felt it when you hugged that person you fed, when you are able to put food on people's tables, right? Not just bring your family out of poverty, but pay folks, when you are able to speak to white dominant culture and they say, feed us more. That is how we begin to move with the confidence and assurance that whatever is in your hand to design and innovate and create and deconstruct right now, that you're the person for that. And the evidence of that is not only in your past, but the shoulder of the ancestors we stand on.
Wow.
That's liberation.
Wow.
My mama didn't go through all this for me not to do something with it.
Gingy Opal said, moving free, but at times it can feel like I'm just moving.
You're telling the truth right there.
And I know that sometimes, in my career, keeping it one thou wow is that, one thou wow, let's go. Is that many times in doing what I needed to do to survive capitalism, what I need to do to survive the streets, what I need to do to survive poverty, included moving not to lose. I got here by being very mental about what's the safe way to move. And many times I had to learn, and a lot of times, by the way, from this magical person right here, that moving free and taking that risk of moving free and not being limited and boxed in by, it just says go in this route, and if we hit these KPIs, if we hit these indicators, if I hit my weekly work plan, that's the way to go. But in fact, break the weekly work plan. That's what Gingy brings to Blaze Consulting. Break the book open and go with the why did we say we were doing that? why are we moving in this direction? And are there other ways to move? And I've learned over time that in many cases when we're problem solving, when we're opening up spaces, when we're creating liberation for communities and for others, or at least the spaces where we create the bubble as we wish the world would actually be, that there's 5 ways, there's 7 ways we can do that. And so I slowly have to remind myself that even though my tendency is to move, not to lose, that moving free, which we're going to break out what some of those elements are, actually allow me to do the new. And the new is often gives us opportunities to see ourselves as we couldn't see ourselves before.
That's right. We're going to do a quick interactive activity, and I want to frame real quick. Earlier in one of the conversations, Sankita Kumar actually brought up around bringing brown and black and brown voices forward. And so one of the activities we want to do, and I think that stifles black and brown folks, is many of us have been raised or conditioned to be invisible. And even if we don't feel invisible, there are folks out there that treat us that way. If we brought back our historian Nika Sewell, she would say that black folks were trained to walk on the street while white folks walked on the sidewalk. We were invisible. And so oftentimes part of creating a liberatory organization is the leader being invisible so the people can be seen. And so we want to do an activity that may make you feel some kind of way. And when you think of it, I don't want you just to think about yourself as a leader, but I want you to think about all those people that you lead. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those people you don't like that you lead, because part of holding power in a liberatory organization is understanding your power so we don't misuse it like someone has on us. All right, y'all ready to roll? Frank, I'm trying to figure out how we get you in the screen a little more. Okay, there he is.
It's a wide screen. They can see more than what we can see.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm glad I cleaned my office. All right. Ready? We're going to get together. It's Friday. No, it's Thursday. It's Friday somewhere. All right.
Please hear me.
I can't hear you.
Please hear me.
I can't hear you.
Please hear me.
I can't hear you. Please trust me.
I can't trust you.
Please trust me.
I can't trust you.
Please trust me.
I can't trust you. Please see me.
I can't see you.
Please see me.
I can't see you.
Please see me.
Nope. Can't see you.
Where does that take us in our bodies and our psyches?
Oh, I felt that. Did anybody else feel that in their body?
Can you put that slide up for us, Amy? What happens in our bodies and our psyche when we don't experience liberatory practice, or where we experience this kind of not being seen, not being heard, not being trusted? I'd love somebody to come on screen.
Yeah.
Talk about what happened in your body and psyche witnessing that. Or write in the chat. We're going to be interactive today.
This is what we call keep it real. Anyone? Okay, I'll start, Frank, until someone comes up. One of the things, and I've done this a lot of times, but when I do this and I have to reject someone or I have to say I can't, I feel it right here in the core of my body get hot. Someone said, wow, that was profound, too real. Felt myself in both rows. That's real. A frozenness shows up in my body when in the absence of liberation. Yeah. Right. A frozenness, right? We freeze.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that frozen is enough to make us not move for years.
That's right.
Because we don't want to feel that way again.
Yeah. And I think, I could speak to what it feels like in our daily work. If we move through spaces that way, anybody who has ever worked for a narcissistic leader knows what this feels like, where you are moving through a space. So your body is moving, but you are frozen in the space.
Yeah. Even a charismatic leader who takes up all the air,
Mm.
right? One of the things, please, when we talk about an organization that is not liberatory, it is, I can't hear you because you don't have a PhD. You don't have a master's. You don't know how to write a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Your speech is not right. Your first language is not English. You are a woman. You are a they and them. I can't hear you. If the question is, are these things being duplicated in the organizations that we are running?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, take a deep breath.
Yeah, let's all take a deep breath.
Oh,
And let's not stay in this space.
all right.
So let's flip this.
Yes.
And now notice what happens in our bodies when we experience it a different way.
See, I just started smiling right there. All right.
Please hear me.
I hear you.
Please hear me.
I hear you.
Please hear me.
I hear you, Franklin.
Mm.
Please trust me.
I trust you.
Please trust me.
I trust you.
Trust me.
I trust you, Gingy. Please see me.
I can see you.
Please see me.
I can see you.
Please see me.
I see you. You look good.
All right. What happens in my body?
Oh, I'm tearing
What
up.
happens in our bodies when we see it when we experience it that way? When we hear those messages repeated over and over in action as well as in words.
Please forgive me if I say your name wrong. Yojin Lee, would you like to come on camera and share with us what's making you tear up?
You could click the bottom right, raise hand. Melting happens. Melting happens.
Melting. Say more about that, right? That's where empathy lives. That's where compassion lives.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. We have a guest.
Bring her in. Bring them in. And we can take the screen down.
Thank you for being so courageous to come on screen.
Mm-hmm. Is Eugene coming in?
Where'd they go? All right. Well, we'll let Amy figure out how to bring our guest in. Any other point you want to make before our guest comes in, Frank?
Well, we remember that when we lack liberatory practices in organizations, it causes us to close our bodies. Our body begins to armor up. And it's not always a bad thing. In some cases, that is the wise thing to do. And so when we can create spaces and community and organization where we hear messages of being heard and being trusted and being seen, and where our colleagues are experiencing that, and where our those that we learn with and co-educate and co-create with, when we have that, then as Antoinette says, that melting takes place. And if it repeats itself again and again, then I can begin to trust that I'm safe here to do good work. I'm safe here to do good work with you.
An example we have of that, and many of you as leaders, Franklin and I have coached thousands of folks from all positions, all walks of life, all religious groups. And so I say this through our research. Part of this also looks like, who is the target in your organization? Who is the one that is most complained about, that people fear the most? So I'll be honest. Can I keep it real? It's called Keep It Real, Gingy. We get calls a lot about how to work with Black women.
Mm-hmm.
How to work with Black women.
Yeah.
And my question then becomes, why can't you work with Black women?
Mm-hmm.
Not they're broken.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because we come into organizations with good intent, yet we bring in our biases. So part of designing liberatory organizations is really keeping it real about the things we have to work on, not this corporate fakeness, not reproducing the sickness of a lot of the nonprofits we came from, or businesses, or educational systems, or community, but really saying, this is my area of weakness. And if you in an organization as a leader or someone who will take on leadership in the future, have people in your organizations that are always the underdog or people are complaining about, I wouldn't necessarily always talk about the folks that people talk about, but about the folks who are talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
That's liberatory.
Come on.
Because we're flipping the script on what we've been taught around what success looks like in our organizations and saying, actually, what does actual authentic success look like in our communities as we build each other, right?
All right. All right. So let's put back up our slide deck and let's jump into our content.
Right. And Yogan Lee, I hope I'm saying your name right. I see your camera can't come on. That's okay. You guys keep figuring it out. And if you put more comments in, well, I'm loving every moment. Okay. Thank you, my friend. We love you too.
All right. So then let's talk a little bit about liberatory organizations from the perspective of Blaze Consulting and how we support organizations as well as have a practice in and of ourselves. And so for us, our definition of a liberatory organization has to include valuing and practicing authenticity as strength. Can we be our real selves in the work? How do we be our real selves in the work? How do we melt at our core, or melt to our core, depending on our history, depending on our experience, melt from the outer layers to the core, or otherwise we let our core shine and melt towards the outside. But how do we allow an organization that invites you to be your whole self in the organization, and that we understand that this place is a place where I can make a mistake and not be shamed? That's what we all want. And if we can achieve that, if we can build those type of spaces, then we'll have communities and organizations where we stay together, where we do things that sometimes are hard, sometimes laborious, sometimes joyful and free, and we blow our bubbles, but we're all being our real selves. Right. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the tools and perspectives that we bring at Blaze to activate authenticity as a strength for our leaders.
And I want to comment as we move to the next I want to read some of y'all's mind real quick. Can I do that? Some of y'all don't want people bringing their real self or their whole self, because sometimes we a hot mess. I'm a hot mess some days, y'all. So if I'm bringing my whole hot mess self into my organization, how do we make sure we still produce excellence on behalf of the people? And so we're going to talk about when we invite people to bring their whole self, we don't mean that doesn't mean we don't become successful at the things we set out to do. That just means that we allyship with each other along the way, because one day he'll have a bad day, I'll have a bad day, two of my team members will have a bad day, but we stay together to move the work forward. We are stronger together.
That's beautiful. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Go for it.
So one of the things we want to start with, and this is with any organizations, and many of you may also know this, but we don't want to assume, is start with values. If you are a new CEO, old CEO, if you are an organizer, if you are a youth developer, if you lead a for-profit, if you are a philanthropist, if you are in ministry, what are your core values? You have to bring your values together on the table. What we know is that diversity is beautiful in an organization, but people only say that, but they don't like when we bring all these mixed values sometimes to the table. The many different values of the individuals at the table is what makes the organization strong. Now we have to have collective core values together in order to know where we stand as a tribe, as a community. And so as leaders, we say, what are your values? In our organization, we ask questions like, what are internal values of us as founders? We founded our company. We're on our second business now. We are extremely successful and still growing. But what we knew is we started our business because we had certain values that we weren't seeing lived in other places we were working. But also we knew that the values we have together as an organization can transform lives. And so the core values of this organization allow us and all of our team members who come in to our team, our consultants, our staff members, our interns, to know that when you go out into the world, how do you show Blaze, right? You know, your mama said, when you leave my house, you better represent my house. It's the same way. It's not oppressive. But when people see me and Frank and they see our colleagues in our company, they should feel the same love. They should feel the same acceptance. They should feel something within them that says that we believe in social justice. And if they don't represent those values, they don't represent our company nor our movement. Do your folks represent your values? And do you guys have collective values? How do we hold our own internal liberation as a process of practice? So for example, we're a married couple. Franklin's a Black man. Just in case you didn't notice, I'll tell you, he is. I'm a Black woman. We are from two oppressive groups, women, Black men. While he tries to continue push up my liberation as a woman leader, I too have to remember he's a Black man who has to fight for his position. And so part of our fight in the org is we don't fight each other. We don't play oppression Olympics. We don't play oppression Olympics. We have colleagues of all nationalities, all economic status, all religious groups. And what we know is our differences are actually what make us stronger. And so in our organization, I want him to be the best human he could be in the way he identifies. I want my team to be the best humans they could be in the way they identify. And my role as a leader is not to define that for them, but to lift them up. How do we share our values with team members as they join our working community? This is the first conversation. It shows up over and over again. Any thoughts, Frank?
I think you got that.
Okay.
Let's share those.
Great.
Let's share what the Blaze values are.
Here are our values. First, I want to go back to the last slide.
No problem.
Part of what we believe in is Black and brown folks, marginalized group of folks, we have to start companies. We have to have impact on a level that's bigger than just being an employee. We have to impact tables. We have to feed people. We have to educate folks. This is our family. And so part of us being courageous leaders like you, hopefully, is that you then give all these young people behind you permission to be courageous. Next slide.
Yeah.
So Blaze's values are, and these are our kids. Those two little boys in the middle are our two little boys, and the two in the end are our nephews. So we believe our values allow them to always believe that they are superheroes in the context that the world needs them. And they need us. Social justice is a value for us. That is not, some people talk, can I keep it real? Some people teach about social justice and they don't know it. They ain't done it. We are social justice. We have not only organized, but we have been the one who received food at the homeless shelter. Mm-hmm. We've been the one that has received domestic violence support. Mm-hmm. We've been the ones that were rejected from school. We were the ones who were diagnosed with IEPs and disabilities. We're the ones that understand all the policy people are trying to create, and they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. So for us, social justice is our organization, is to hire people in our organization that actually may not have fit in the box, but they are geniuses. They are creatives. Okay. They come from what they talk about. Mm. So social justice is not just about standing in a protest. We used to, one day we protested on the freeway in Oakland on 880. We realized we had kids. We thought we was going to jail that night. They wrote the numbers on our arm and everything. And then what I realized is actually social justice with me is how many Black and brown families could I feed? Mm. How many people could I hire that other people wouldn't hire and train so they could be great? That's social justice. Mm. Frank?
All right. The second value that we operate from is servant leadership, and that just means that I'm in service to the community. I'm absolutely in service to the community, and anything that I define in leadership that is about my ego or about me leading or about who I am and my mind or whatever, it's not the position that we've tried to take for our approach to doing community movement and community work, but really being able to sit back into a facilitative leadership role is just very comfortable in many cases, but also a powerful role and impact that we can have. Essentially saying, where are we trying to go collectively, and then how do I sit back and serve my way? And serve the community, the front line, the core, and being able to move in that direction. And so it's also so much more of a stance and a posture of trying to maintain humility without announcing I'm humble.
Right.
Because if you announce you're humble, then you're not practicing humility. So, you gotta, we allow for the complexity of that. And that's a piece of who we are.
Yeah. And those two together, social justice and servant leadership, means that whoever Franklin is mentoring our company should one day take his job.
That's right.
So that means we lead in order to move out the way. And part of he does this amazing, if you know this, his servant leadership is the more I can support the person who is not in my position to be great, then one day they will take over this and they will do greater things than we could have ever done. So let's talk about faith. There's a panel chat too, Frank.
Yep.
Faith. When we talk about faith, we have our faith practices and beliefs. But what we have also learned is when you bring multiple faiths and beliefs to a table, not to change people's mind, but to understand the complexity of the world through our different faiths, you create such richness, such learning, such wisdom in organizations that then you can touch multiple people. So when we talk about faith, we believe that we are called to take risks, to do things that are not popular with dominant culture, to make mistakes. And in that, the faith behind that is there are people who came before us that sacrificed for us to be here. They believed we all would come, even though they would never see. Our faith in our organization is everything we do. Policies, procedures, practices, designs, budgeting, everything we do is not actually to serve us, but it's to serve those who will come. Because in all the organizations, here's the goal. Can your organization outlive you and be healthy? So faith for us is, I will leave a healthy organization or multiple businesses that the future generations can call back and thank the ancestors and go so much further than whenever we did. Why is that important? Because liberation in organizations, new and old, does not happen in one generation. It starts in a generation, but it only shows evidence if it lasts through multiple generations.
Great.
Faith.
And then finally, Ubuntu is just our core principle of I am because we are. And it's just so core. It's hard to describe. It's our ethos. It's it's the water that we try to swim in. It's understanding that everything that Gingy has basically laid out to this point, that we didn't get here by accident, and that we are, completely understanding that we connect to source, we connect to self, we connect to others, we connect to nature, and we connect in the Ubuntu principle with other people, and that allows us to lead with love, collective healing, compassion, grace for one another, forgiveness and restoration with each other, being able to understand that there is power when we laugh together, dance together, sing together. And so it is just so very core to who we are.
Yeah. So
those are our values.
Frank, do we want to pause right there and see if there's any questions or comments, or anyone want to come on screen?
Sure. So feel free to jump in with any questions or to come on screen to your bottom right if you want to raise your hand.
We'll wait about 10 seconds and then move on.
Okay, great. Okay. Great. This has been a great opportunity. So thank you all for rocking with us in the last ending slots of the conference.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll.
All right, let's talk about authenticity. Ooh, this is the Keep It Real corner. The practice of removing, the practice of removing our masks while we work. All right, y'all. In liberated organizations, if you can't be you, then we ain't liberated.
We could just stop and just open up and just let people talk with each other.
Mm.
This is why we need the Zoom, not the Zoom.
We
with
wish
the
we could
breakout
see.
rooms, so we could just
Listen, if you can't be you, we're not liberated.
We're not liberated.
So part of what we have been conditioned in this country, I'm gonna say America, I don't know where you're calling from, but where I'm sitting right now, is that we can't bring our whole self because our whole self is not good enough. But what we're saying in the work we do is it's actually my whole self that makes me good enough, that makes me deserve a seat at the table. Can't nobody talk about being hungry like I could talk about being hungry.
Come on.
Can't nobody talk about imposter syndrome like I could talk about imposter syndrome, because it's my being. But if we can't be vulnerable and create vulnerable spaces within our organizations for people to bring their whole truth, then we actually don't know the gold mine we're sitting on wisdom, knowledge, and revolutionary design. Stop minimizing your stuff and use it for success. My trauma is not only my testimony, but it's actually my liberation tool to set others free. And so we talk about taking off the mask. In most of our companies and businesses, or when we meet with people, if we can't get a bit of who they really are, we can't hire them. But in order for that to happen, they also have to trust us. That's why we open with sharing our own story. We don't ask our staff to do anything we're not willing to do ourselves.
Right.
We don't sit in judgment of folks. When people see us, they know that we are serious about getting our deliverables done and doing business, but that doesn't come at the price of oppressing them so and making people have to play fake instead of be real.
So let's talk about how we do it.
Yeah. Come on now, tell it.
The first thing we do is we have to have authentic. Everything happens by relationships. And we want to have relationships that are rooted in authenticity, not transaction, not being in a place where folks are constantly having the message, you are not enough, or I can't trust you, I can't see you, I can't celebrate you. We don't want to lead from that place. And so we want to also understand that we don't want to lead from a place where you are your product, you are the ability to deliver. If we have authentic relationships, then we show up for each other over the work. And we'll talk about that more in a second. And so the first thing that we do is we value humans over the numbers, right? So it's not just about making the KPIs, making the indicators, completing a work plan. It's not just about the numbers served. It's not primarily about that. When we fill out these grants, when we fill out these work reports, and we have to announce these numbers and these signatures and so forth, it's the human transformation that still has to come before that. And what we try to do in our work is have countless ways, as many ways as possible, to demonstrate and interrogate our company and have our colleagues interrogate and mirror back to us. How are we doing on the human aspect of the work? Even as we try to make change, even as we try to make transformation, even as all the work around trying to bring equity that's trying to happen in this country, where are the human stories in that? As a matter of fact, the human stories are the pathway there, but, and the human connection. So those relationships are a piece. And then I will say, second, is that we have to build and hold trust. Everything happens by trust, by the way. That is going to remain, that can sustain us, that can sustain our work, that can sustain our movement. And so we have to have pathways towards increasing trust through our relationships. And we have to have, and that basically leads straight to our practices. So our practices that support bringing your whole self to work. So let me give you an example. When I work with an organization in developing their organizational culture, one of the questions that I ask, that we've learned to ask down through the years, is, okay, what are your team agreements? Now, this is something that people have been practicing for 20, 30 years. What are your team agreements? But then we start to, remember that part where Gingy says we start to dig for the truth, that people bring us in to tell the truth? Then we start to ask, what is your agreement about third-party conversations here? Oh, what do you mean by that? What do you do when someone comes to you on the team and says, hey, I'm really annoyed with Clyde. I don't know why I picked that old name for my family, but I'm really annoyed with Clyde. What happens then? What's your agreement about talking behind each other's backs? Let's talk about that piece. What's your agreements about being together on the weekend and talking about people that you have issue with? How soon will you get back to the person you have a disagreement with? How soon will you have the restorative conversation or the air clearing conversation? Right? What happens if someone witnesses or they hear something about their colleague? What do you do with that information? No, they're not just venting. We have to have a practice that, hey, Gingy, you want to talk about Clyde? Hey, I get that. And I want to know how I can support you to go back to Clyde in 48 hours. Those are the practices that help us to be in authentic relationships, even when the times get hard. And that's just one of them. You also experience check-in. So we always check in. We always do shout outs and appreciations. So that allows us to bring our whole self to work. And Gingy's going to talk about in just in a second about all the practices we do that also create space for us to be whole with our mind, bodies, and spirits. So I think we could just transition now.
Yeah, and part of this is how we manage tension. So we know there will be tension in organizations, in particular when you're encouraging people to be their authentic self.
Yes.
Part of the way you create and maintain a liberatory organization is you have process to manage the tension so we ain't pissed with each other tomorrow. Right? And so part of that is create systems and policies that support team members and their well-being and wholeness. So one of the things when we do diversity, equity, inclusion work, we talk about policies and procedures are set in place to protect all of us from our biases. We are all born and raised with biases. Now, if you come on, keep it real. You know what your mama said, what your daddy said, what your step person said. You know what your religion says, all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not judging no one, but what we're saying is people in power got to be aware of that, or else we become the people in power that we hate. Oh. And so policies and procedures and process allow us as leaders to constantly keep our own biases and triggers in check, as well as showing our team how we can all be different, yet respect each other, move the work forward, and show the world that Black and brown folks, I'm sorry, we didn't just start leading when America was discovered. We've designed ancient civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
Perfection culture, yep. The white dominant culture. We've been excellent for hundreds of years, y'all. And the way we've been excellent in our cultures, I heard a person talk about Vietnam and defeating the Americans. The way we have been amazing for hundreds of generations and not been white is because we have tribal practices to keep ourselves in check and move it forward, to keep it moving. So what are the village practices that you all have in your orgs to keep it moving forward?
Come on.
I do not approve when people say now all this diversity, equity, inclusion work means I don't supervise Black and brown folks. I say, if you don't do that, if you don't hold us accountable, then you actually are reinforcing white dominant culture. My role is to make sure that every Black and brown person that works for me achieves their highest potential while they are in my presence. And that means calling us up. What are the practices and procedures we use, the village, the tribe, so that we can be the next generation of great innovators, y'all? It's a scary world out there, but it's also an extraordinary world. The next one.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all.
No, I was just going to say, and that piece, what makes it not oppressive from a supervision standpoint is that we have the authentic relationships. We have the authentic relationships where we've shared with each other how we're trying to grow. how we're trying to move, how we're trying to lift each other up. So now I have to be able to be completely vulnerable and say, Gingy, I know that I struggle with thinking on the fly. I know I struggle when it comes to crisis management. I know I struggle when certain faces come onto the screen, certain titles come onto the screen, and all my imposter syndrome comes up. So I want you to call me out when I need to grow in those areas, when I need to confront the imposter syndrome in me. And so now, but what keeps us in that is that piece of us that is impacted by dominant culture that makes us feel like we have to show up perfect, put together all the other pieces. And then even when, can I keep it real? Even when we as our own start to hold each other to those same practices. And so it's about having the shared power, the mutual regard for each other's gifts, talents, the celebration of who everybody's strengths are on the team. I'm going to outdo. When I work with Karishi, she and I gonna outdo each other trying to put a 10 on each other's forehead. She's telling me how great I am. She's pointing it out in public spaces. I'm pointing out in public spaces how great she is. We fighting to try to make the other the better, the more powerful, the most impactful, the most, and whatever it is. So this is what it means to. From that place, we definitely can call each other up.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, we got to keep it moving.
No, it's
we
good.
About out of
I
time.
just forgot something.
I know. We're going to have to get together on this weekend, y'all.
If you're still out there, can you give us like an emoji or something? Hello? Hello?
Yep.
Okay, they're out there.
They're there. They're hitting the little things.
A couple things I also then want to say as we look at rest and things like that is that as we build liberatory organizations, can I keep it all the way real, Black and brown folks?
Keep it real, Ginger.
And I want it after this. In my work, the organizations and leaderships that are the hardest, it is harder for us Black and brown folks to undo the white thinking that we believe is how we're supposed to be.
That's crazy.
It is easier to train folks who haven't bought into oppression. Why? Because my grandma taught me that. My Black mentor taught me that.
Yeah.
My abuelo taught me that.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about liberatory organizations and policies, practices, procedures, doing things different, I'm speaking to my folks who we were raised and conditioned to believe all of that shit. Why? Because we needed to make it home at night.
Mm-hmm.
So part of being a liberatory leader at this point is we gonna make it home at night.
Mm.
Take a deep breath. Because it's our organizations that need to undo the oppressive systems we bought into so we could go back to the tribe and the village and create ancient civilizations that one day won't even mention all this other stuff.
This is who I have to have dinner with every night. Let's talk about these systems and policies.
So we want to talk about time, rest, and recovery. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, we done been through a lot in the last few years as a world globally, and in particular as people of color and oppressive groups. We need to rest, y'all. My doctor, I got sick, and she told me, Gingy, you need to do gentle thinking.
Gentle thinking.
I told her, I'm a Black woman that grew up in the hood. I don't gently think. But now I'm learning how to rest. I have a book coming out about that we'll talk about. Okay, let's bring Karishi in the room real quick. All right. Time to resolve and rise. Pivot your agenda when needed. Great. All right. Come on in. Come on in the room.
Sorry. When Karishi comes on, can we take down the screen?
Please, my friend.
I'm sorry, y'all. I keep hopping on. But as you were talking, one of the things that that comes up for me, it's been a question that I've had recently in doing work with folks trying to do it in a liberatory way, is that although I am trying to be liberatory in my practices, that does not mean necessarily that they are ready to receive liberatory practices, right? And I remember working, I worked at Mac, and they would be like, you need to be like, basically they wanted me to be an authoritarian. And I was like, I'm a youth developer. I don't lead like that. But they would want me. It was like, that's how they saw leadership. And so if I wasn't doing that, then that meant that I wasn't leading correctly. And so I guess my question, because y'all are training so many organizations, is the answer to that. Like, what do you do, even if your concept and your consciousness, how you want to be is from a liberatory framework? How do you deal with the people that you're leading and you're working with that aren't ready to receive that?
Yeah. And so there's so many tools, that I've learned how to access over time. One is just the wonderful power of storytelling. Storytelling to give insight into what is the type of in the community or the environment we're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
And then having people grapple with, how do we create the world here as we wish it were out there? Mm-hmm. So we give ourselves permission to receive what you're talking about, to receive that liberatory approach that is not about being authoritarian and oppressed, right? I mean, in the I don't know if we could keep doing this, but let's just go for the sake of transparency. Obviously, for the audience, Kairisha and I worked together down in the trenches, and I remember one of our colleagues said to me, "Well, Franklin," I said, "Why are we not producing the outcome that we're trying to produce, and why are people not showing up in the way that they need to show up?" And one person kind of raised their hand and said, "Franklin, sometimes we need to spank." And I was like, whoa, we need to spank? That's what you're saying to me? And so at its core, that colleague was saying, I need you to check in with me, and then when the time comes, check in with me again, and check in with me again, and hold that space, right? But the language was that I can't receive it in the way that you're doing it now. And so I have to do the work to try to create the space for us to imagine, what if we don't need to spank? Let's have a conversation. Now, what that means on the developmental side, let's talk about professional development. We got to make the investment of time
You're right.
for reflection and for visioning. And we can't always be in crisis.
Yeah, you're right.
Because those spaces, those conversations, it's very hard for them to take place in crisis. And by the way, we need to give people, and Gigi's talked about this, we're at time, but we have to give people the resources in our teams to be able to have these reflections and conversations. So that means that sometimes on my team and working in community, people have personal crisis, people got to pick up kids, people got to meet their own personal deadlines, people get sick, their mamas get sick, their cousins get sick, and I got to build into all my structures and systems a way that allows for all of that to be true, because that's authentic. And we got to put 2 hours or 2 days on the books to have this important reflection and conversation where we all have to be in the room. So now we got to imagine a new way.
Yeah. I'm going to speak a little more in a different, and this is why it's also good to have different opinions. Sometimes you got to burn the ship down.
Well,
and what I mean by is that there are some places you should not be if it's not aligned with your values. And some people will hire you because you check off the box, but they won't get the right to speak because they know their truth. We can't assume all Black and brown leaders are ready for radical liberation.
That's right.
And when we come into our organizations in that specific way, Kairisha, we have to know what are my uncompromisable values. Now, there are some things, okay, we could take time to build that. We could take time to understand that. But if you're going to ask me to lie or forge something on a kid in the Black community, we're not working together. And so this is where you, as a person who believes in liberation, is the organization aligned with your values. And even if they aren't executing them to perfection, can you grow into them as an org? And are you part of the team that will help that? So there's some orgs we got to walk away from. Then there's some orgs we got to invest in the change. And then there's some orgs we just got to set that thing ablaze.
Okay.
I'll stop right there.
She said it.
I'm with it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Uh-oh, Tammy done went to the Bible. All right, let's go. All right, come on, Amy. Let's see what we got. We got just a few more minutes. I want to make sure we have time for Q&A.
We'll rush through this.
We feel free to interrupt us. It's really great. We love it.
Yeah. We hope this is helping for somebody out there. You out there? You out there? All right. Is it me? Is it you? That's me.
You can take it.
Okay. Go to the village. We say in creating liberatory organizations, go to the village for learning and resources. Guys, if you are the smartest person in the room, you in the wrong room. Here's what I mean. As those of us who are creating new structures and systems and innovation and undoing things, we have to be comfortable with sitting in spaces and places where we're not the smartest and wisest. I love that at times, but I know that what makes me a better leader is when I can sit in rooms where I can be taught as well, and where I can be checked, where I can go to the well and pull out resources. If you are the depth of knowledge and wisdom alone in your org, then that is dangerous. Why? Because in a liberatory organization, our survival is not contingent upon one charismatic leader or one ED or one organizer. It is contingent upon the tribe. And the tribe has resources. We have young interns. I'm telling y'all, they could do all this social media picture better than us. Please. They are teaching me. When I come to the table to meet with them, I don't come as their boss. I come as a student. Don't minimize the young to the old to the different from you, because that is the wealth of information we need. Freedom to evolve and create new solutions and ways. If you don't know the research on how nonprofit organizations were started, go do some studying. It was started out of pity from white women to fund things and do things with their money, and it fell upon of all of our oppressed communities. Well intent, yet it created some sicknesses in organizations and structures that need to be undone. Don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to mess up, leaders. Mess up, because that's how we learn. And as soon as you realize there was something you didn't know, learn it and start over. That's how we redesign our systems. Okay, here's the last one. Feedback is a gift. Who are you giving permission to check you?
Put it in the chat.
Ooh, who do you give permission to check you?
Put it in the chat.
Okay. Part of American culture is competitive, and no one can tell me anything. Part of tribal culture is the tribe has permission, and I trust them. If you as a leader of a liberatory organization don't have truth tellers around you in your personal life, in your professional life, in your spiritual life, then you actually are a dangerous leader that one day will build an organization that I will try to deconstruct. And why do I say that? Because truth tellers around you will not be yes men, women, they, and them. They will speak truth to your power. As a leader, you will have power over somebody one day. And that power has to be balanced by people who can see your blind spots. I think somebody just whispered in their head, I don't have no blind spots. Or ask your truth tellers. Or I love sitting with truth tellers, because when I sit with them, this is one, they make me better. My own intellect doesn't make me better, but other people's truth, and then I decipher what is, makes us better leaders. That's how we build civilizations.
Let's have an interactive moment. Really, who has permission to check you? Write it in the chat.
Blast the chat, blast it.
Who has permission to check you? Who has permission to point out your blind spots? Put in it, there's 40 people or so, 25 people to 40 people here. Name the names. Who really has permission? They know it. Name the name.
My team members, my community, someone's saying.
Sometimes I sit in rooms, and I really do find that people will say, I don't have anyone that has permission to check me.
Mm-hmm. My therapist, intimate settings, my coach, my friends, young people, my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Bernita and Sharon, my chosen family.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Holly said, my sons. There you go, my daughters.
The thing I love about our truth tellers is
my spiritual godmother.
We need to trust their truth the most in crisis, but we learn to trust them when they just tell us truth every day. And so these truth tellers in your life, they build up trust. They build up credibility as you allow them on a regular basis to filter truth into your life. So when the moment a leader comes to make a decision that can make or break something, you then can trust that truth. Holly, I see you said not my husband. I tell you, it's rare. I know this is a rarity right here. Yeah. Some of us can't trust, let's be real, certain people and family in our life, because sometimes people can't see us in our leadership. They can only see us in a dominant role to us or who we used to be.
Or they have an agenda for us.
Or they have an agenda. Yeah, so here's what I love about you selecting your truth tellers is you selected them. Mm-hmm. Spirit, yes. The truth that comes in my dreams sometimes feels like I'm smacking the face. I'm loving a smack. Y'all, let's talk about them ancestors. Don't even play. Some of you have spiritual gifts where you have intuition. You have a connection to God, to nature, whatever you call it. You have ancestors that will come forth. Take a moment as a leader to study yourself and allow yourself to see how truth shows up in your life. And then trust it.
Yeah.
My ancestors stayed reading me. All right. I think we one more slide and we'll take questions. Whichever
this one?
Yeah, if that's what you want.
All right. So to know, just like knowing our story is, pretty core to how you even see us interacting and leading on inside of our community here at Blaze, is this idea of faith. So many messages that we've received that we should not move forward or move ahead. Mm-hmm. So many barriers to that. And so many messages from internal and external that say, I don't know how, I'm not worthy, or even my type of people don't do that. My type of people don't go in these rooms. My type of people aren't allowed. I don't have permission. And so a big piece of understanding is that we're one in 7 billion, y'all. And yet at the same time, we dare to believe that we could do small things that add to her small thing, that adds to your small thing, that can somehow make a difference to human history. And so we simultaneously take ourselves seriously, and simultaneously we don't take ourselves too seriously. And we understand that we are part of something larger, a truth that is continuing to roll down. And sheets are being shaken all over the place, as my mother-in-law would say. And so faith for us is sometimes, despite the information in front of us saying no, we still jump and we still practice cliff jumping, and we just acknowledge that's a part of taking a faith move.
Yeah. You can pull down the screen.
Great.
Some of us,
Amy, go ahead and take down
when
the screen.
things are hard in our organization as leaders,
Thank you.
we want to revert back naturally to systems and practices and ways of being that were inherently passed down to us, even if they were dysfunctional. And when we talk about jumping off of the cliff as leaders, we say, do it even if it's hard. Keep going. So if you are on this call or have been in this training, my thought is you are trying to live a liberated life, to create a liberated organization, to understand what liberation means in this day. Do it with courage. What we are saying takes a lot of courage to go into your board, your staff member, to go into yourself with your journal and say, this is not liberation. This is liberation. To assess your own movement, to assess your org's movement, to create a timeline that says this won't happen overnight, but it will in 2 to 3 years. And a lot of us that come from oppressed communities have a hard time planning years out because life has been pulled out from under us month after month after day after day. We say part of liberation is to think in the years. And maybe there's something in your org you can't shift now, but the beginning part is to identify the oppressive systems and cultures that we practice, and then to create a plan with your team, and by faith and skill and knowledge and labor of your hands, your heart, your mind, and your spirit with your team, get to work. Why is that important? Because when the future calls back to us as ancestors, we will be taken into account of what we did. Do we want to pass down in nonprofits, in for-profit orgs, as educators, as youth developers, as organizers, as politicians, as preachers, as healers? Do we want to pass down the sickness we inherited? Or do we want the future to look at us back as ancestors and say, thank you. And now we will go forward. Y'all, let's not give to the future what we inherited from the past. And part of that is breaking some of our own systems and creating liberated organizations. Anyone want to come on screen? Say anything, question, comment, joke?
Yeah.
You're out there.
They're out there.
They're out there.
They're out there. We want to leave some time for any, if you want to ask nuts and bolts questions about leading organizations or questions about that impact you as a leader, or let's have a conversation. You can put it out to the group. We could co-create the learning.
I want to say too, part of a liberation organization is also understanding your finances. That's a whole nother topic, but let's understand our finances so we can keep our businesses going. All right. Hello.
Okay. That may be it. We'll give 10 more seconds.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to Center for Third Ward Organizing. Your historically have been a part of my life. I remember being in my early 20s and going to C2 events and organizing and spending the night in the mansion when I was 18, 19, 20. So I have some historical knowledge of that organization. And so we celebrate C2. We celebrate the Living Liberation Conference. It's been quite a wonderful conversation, certainly giving us things to think about. And to Kairishi, to Jake and Amy. Amy, thank you so much, our technical team member. And I wish you all a great week. Let's see if there's one other question. Are we willing to tell a story of an org that we've seen transform without names? Yeah, so let me say it's a process and a practice and a value. So I've seen an organization that has made what I thought was positive moves in the right direction. And I'll just lift up one thing that I saw them do. that I was like, come on, y'all, that's what I'm talking about. And this organization, which was multicultural, went through, they have 90 or so staff people, so they're a fair organization. And they went through and did the data work on all of their staff and did the demographics of their staff and who had degrees, who didn't have degrees, who was on the front line, who wasn't on the front line, what people's salaries are. And they did discover that their leadership staff and some of their white staff, mostly their white staff, were being paid at the higher rate to do the same job in a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And so they went back and they wrote everybody a check to repair the harm, and they righted all the salaries based on the work that was being done. And they, that particular leader had to take on their board, they had to take on their leadership, they had to take on people's egos, and they did that work. And there's a lot more I can say about that if people want to get in touch with Blaze Consulting around that. Those are the kind of moves, because it took 2 or 3 individuals to actually say, we're going to do this and hold the line in the face, because everybody bought in. All 90 people said they wanted to be equitable and fair. But when it came down to doing that work, people had to go, oh, you're going to raise this person's salary to my salary, And so they did that work, and it took something from them. But the work was transformative and just living the values.
I've also seen in a nonprofit or multiple we've worked in where they've overturned the board. And so oftentimes when boards are founded in CBOs, they are based on what the board needs to fundraise legally, all these things. And while that's great, there are a lot of them do not represent the clients we serve.
Correct.
And so oftentimes orgs will come to us and say, can you restructure our staff need this? And the first thing we say is, let me see your board. And so we've had situations where the boards have been replaced. And why is that important sometimes? Because we have Black and Latinx and Asian lawyers and doctors and fundraisers that can sit at board tables that come from our communities. And the board has so much control in a CBO, if you are a board-driven organization, that it actually impacts the culture of an org. So you can bring in new systems all day. You can work with your line staff all the way up to your executives all day. But if the board is not healthy and reflective and supportive authentically, then actually your problem is not your team, it's your board. And so we've seen organizations transition their boards over a couple years to become more reflective of the community it serves. Stop letting people gaslight you or us and tell us that we don't have no powerful Black and brown folks out there that can sit on boards. That's a lie. People just being lazy trying to find them. But we out there. We out there.
Tammy said good financial management, personal and organizational, is an act of self-care. Yeah. An act of self-care. That's right. Is. And she said hashtag sleep well. Mm-hmm. I know that's right. Raquel said an organization I was a part of trying to shift the work based on skills and desires of the current team. It felt admirable, but it also kept changing with new staff, right?
Yes.
Which happens. And it started to feel like we can never really get going. How can you reconcile the desire? Yeah, I mean, I would have to hear what the specifics of, what the organization, how they put that, right. I've heard of that practice, and you put it into systems, and the organization I know about that did it had to have a regular doesn't mean like monthly, regular could mean semi-annually, a check-in on what people's skills were so that you take everybody new that's coming in and you reshift the load. And so it's about, for that organization, it was about how often did you do that shift? And then how did people adjust to that? And also that some of that you do have to put in some, the emotional side of that. You gotta account for that, because some human beings do change very well, and some people don't do change very well. And so you have to account for that in the system so that it has predictability.
Right. Write it down.
Predictability
Policy
is
procedures.
key.
When we train executives, we say when you leave, I want to end with that last comment.
Okay.
When you leave your organization, the structure should not leave if it's healthy. And so when that happens, there's usually a lack of policy procedures written, and it's what we call gentleman agreements made, which is we can make it verbally, but when he leaves, that agreement leaves. Put it on paper. Last comment. I want to comment to what Winston said as what's that one?
Rahima said, do you work with individuals?
We do. Go ahead and email.
Then you go to Winston.
Winston, we want to end on this. Winston says, the board legally owns the organization. We need to build strong boards and start with the correct values. So I want to ask you guys this question. Who owns you? Who owns the organization you work for? If you don't know, go look and see, because Winston is correct. And even in the for-profit, who owns that? And why is that important? Because I could be a leader for 15 years. And in one moment, I could say something the board didn't like because I stood up for Black women, and my group was a group of women who don't look like me, who are intimidated by my loud voice, and they could fire me overnight. And so check your organization, check your board, check the leadership. And when Winston, I want to use the word again, who owns. Designing liberatory organizations is not about just the workers, but it's about who owns it. Because the ownership of that organization, from board to executives to CEO to presidents, makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I have is, do you own the organization as if you own it? If you don't have love for the organization you work for, as if this is my work, then you actually may not also be at the right place. Because it takes that type of commitment to design something that goes against dominant culture. Right? Ooh, there's so much going on.
I know, now we're getting that.
We got 3 minutes, I think. The public, goes down.
No. So I think, what you just said about ownership of the board, it's the board has fiduciary and governance responsibility for the organization achieving its mission and purpose that's stated in the 990 or in its 501c3.
Or ED-led.
Right. But that doesn't mean that that's how each organization runs. Some organizations run with a heavy-handed board, and some run with a heavy-handed executive director or co-executive directors who operate from the principle that the board are here to support us as the executive directors. So you get both cultures. And I won't weigh in on that piece, but in fact, you're absolutely right. We're all nonprofits. We are responsible to the greater good of the society and of the good on paper.
On paper.
And so that's the principle. But let me just say, once you pull the 990s of a nonprofit, it tells you a lot about how the organization is run, because it's going to list the top 5 compensated folks. It's going to list the board members, and it's going to tell you how the organization is run.
Right. And Nika, I see your comment. I'm glad you're feeling more liberated. Ooh, this is good. We could keep going.
All right.
You all, please.
We got to get folks to a break.
Yeah. Please, here's some water.
Thank you.
Please continue to take care of yourself. Take a break. Love on yourself. And no, I will tell you, as a friend has told me, we need you to take care of you because the world needs you. So what is your self-care plan at the end of this day?
Yeah.
What is your self-care plan this weekend? And do know that wherever you serve, you are needed. And we can't pour from an empty cup.
Have a great week.
Be blessed.
Have a great weekend, y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you.